So welcome to the MongoDB Part 4 recording. Today we're going to talk about put and delete. So we are in MLab, and we already have our food model in place with posts and get all and get by ID. So we're going to be working with our food schema. So we already have everything in the model in place, so we're going to go to our controller for foods. And we're going to start off by doing a put foods. So we need all of our fields. So we're going to say ID, name, category, I want to make this match up with the post. So we're going to do description category. Calories and expired. Fat arrow syntax. So now I was experimenting with this the other day, and I noticed if you put in null or undefined, Mongo is actually updating fields to null or undefined. So I want to make this intelligent so it doesn't update fields that we don't specify. So we're going to start off by creating a new JSON object and adding fields if they have values. So we'll say let update JSON equals squiggly brackets, and then if name update JSON.name equals name, and then we'll do that for all of our fields. And if you see me miss something in here, let me know. Like if I forget to update one of these properties as I'm going. Alex, would this be a good candidate for a ternary operation? Alright, there you have it. So now we have our JSON. So now that's only going to include the fields that we've had values for because we're using the truthy. Is this have a value? Is it null or undefined or less than -1? And if it matches any of those, it shouldn't get included in our JSON here. So now we're going to take our food model, and we are going to find by ID and update. So this is going to take two parameters here, and that's going to be our ID, and our second parameter is going to be our update JSON, and we are going to return this. So what do I need to do now, JJ?
Wouldn't you need to export that so it can be used by the reps?
Yes. Alright, so now we are going to hop into our food route. And we have our router already defined with express, and we're going to give it a router.put. And then we need to specify inline URL param for ID, because it's standard to have the ID of the resource that you're updating in the URL or URI. And pass in a second parameter of request and response in a function. And then we're going to call food controller dot put foods. And first we need to grab our values. So we are going to say let ID equals rec dot params, that's plural, dot ID, and then grab everything else. And everything else is going to be from our body, since the items that we're updating will be included in the put JSON. And then I would think, I've already typed this all out somewhere else. And just copy it from the post. So then we should have 6 parameters that we've defined. So ID, name, category, calories, expired. So then we want to execute this, and it's going to first we'll say dot then. So on our success, it's going to return a response of the, we'll call it food update. And that will be arrow syntax. And then we'll just rest.json our food update. And then suppose that we have an error dot catch, and we'll call that error in our function here. We will rest.json and give it a bad status code, or sorry, rest.status. We'll say 400, just a general catch-all. And then we'll let Mongo tell us what went wrong in their own JSON body that they provided for us. So let's go ahead and give this a try. So now I'm going to pull up Postman, and I am going to go to my database, because I have to know of an existing record first. So here we have cottage cheese with this ID. And I'm going to change the name of this to sour cream, category dairy. We're not going to give it calories are expired. And now we'll try posting. And we got back at 200 OK. Now does anyone see an issue with what it returned to us?
It returned the wrong thing because it was a put, not a post.
Correct. So it should have returned to us the updated function. If you had been in class on Wednesday, you would have known how to handle that. Shame. Alright. So I'm going to go ahead and stop this. And now I'm going to go to the food controller, and I am going to tell you about the third parameter for defined by ID and update. Allie, do you have any suggestions on what should go here?
I don't know.
Okay. So if I had a JSON with a new property, do you know what should go after that? Boolean value.
True.
True, thank you. So what we're going to say here is that you can define some properties of what gets returned back. And by default, the put for some reason returns the old value. So if you specify new, true, it will return the updated value to you. So let's do this again. And Catherine, what kind of food are we updating this to?
Mac and cheese.
You would. So we are going to call this blended mac and cheese.
This is a crime.
Alright, and this is no longer dairy, this is baby food. So now we're going to update this, and we're going to look, and there's the blended mac and cheese with baby food. So there is our put. And now I'm going to move on to the delete here. So you'll notice that the put and the delete will be a lot easier doing it through Mongo than when we just built our own fake database object, because before you would have to find the index of it, find the object of it, and then splice it back into the array. It'd be like 3 calls that seemed like a lot more work than it should have been. Whereas Mongo, it's just 1 call and you're done. So we're back in our food controller, and we're going to say, did I say let last time? Const, okay. Const delete food. So Connor, what parameter would you use to delete a food?
ID.
Thank you. Equals ID. And I can probably just do this in one line here. So I'm going to say food model.find by ID and delete. I'd be interested in seeing how remove is different than delete. Maybe I'll research that and let you guys know another time. So what would I have to do now? All right, let's export this. And then we'll follow the usual pattern that we've had so far. So we'll say router.delete here, and then that is going to be the same kind of URL as the put. So I'll take 1 parameter of ID. And then we'll say food controller dot delete food, and then I'm going to be lazy here and say rec.params.id. And I can get away with that here because if they don't actually include a rec.params.id in here, that's going to default back to the it's just going to, Express is going to come back and say, hey, you don't have anything specified for a delete with no URL param. So it'll be a 404 if they don't provide it. And then, what's the next command we need to say? Dot then, thank you. And we'll call this delete response. And we're not going to use it, because generally when you're doing a delete, we're just going to say, it worked, good job. So we'll just say response.json status and delete for food with ID of plus. Ooh, I should have made this an ID because I wanted to use it again. What do we need after this? What was that, Alex?
Yeah.
Thank you. And we'll say rest.status 400 So suppose that I was doing this in real life, I would probably write some kind of function that would dive deeper into the error that it gave back and see why it failed, and then customize the rest.status to match up with that. Like, is it an internal server error? Then I give it a 500. Did it give a non-GUID kind of field for an ID? Then I would say 400 because they gave the, and say you passed in the incorrect kind of parameter, and so on. So now we're going to run this again and go into Postman. And we have a delete, and we have the same URI, so this should work. We don't have a body, but the API isn't going to care, so we'll try sending this. And we got 200, delete for food with ID of that succeeded. So now we need to go back into the database and see if we only have one record. And we have one record. So now we have a database with 2 gets by ID and get all, a put, a post, and a delete.